become a worldwide pandemic. John transfers into a military unit with 7 other time travelers, and their job is to go back and try and prevent as much environmental damage as possible. The narrative John Titor creates is very detailed, and I'll link to a page where you can read every one of his posts. And even though people on the message board were entertained and fascinated, they were skeptical. They wanted to know, 1, can you tell us how your time travel device works? And 2, can you show us a picture of it? The answer was yes, and yes. John Titor posted diagrams of his time travel device, pictures of the operator's manual, and even pictures of the device itself. According to John, time travel is discovered in 2034 by scientists at CERN. Using this breakthrough technology, General Electric actually creates working time travel devices. These machines go through various iterations and improvements. The time travel unit John Titor uses is a C204 gravity distortion time displacement unit, which operates using microsingularities, or tiny black holes.
The source of power for the C204 that allows it to distort and manipulate gravity comes from 2 microsingularities that were created, captured, and cleaned at a much larger and circular facility. The dual event horizons of each one and their mass is manipulated by ejecting electrons onto the surface of their respective ergospheres. The electricity comes from batteries. The breakthrough that will allow for this technology will occur within a year or so when CERN brings their larger facility online.
John Titor talks about Kerr black holes, which are black holes that rotate, and Tipler cylinders. Now, these are real theories in physics that involve time travel. One of the most interesting pieces of technology in John Titor's time machine is called a variable gravity lock system, or VGL. Since the machine only travels through time and not space, the VGL makes sure that the Earth is in the same place in orbit when it reaches its destination. Otherwise, you end up floating in space, which is not ideal.
The hard part of traveling through time is not the bending of gravity, but the plotting of your course and holding to the basic position in your environment. This is done through a system called VGL, Variable Gravity Lock. In effect, it holds you to the Earth. During travel, it periodically checks to see that the field is not varied. If it does, it stops and reverses course or drops out at that point. Buildings and other terrain features are avoided in the same way. As soon as the VGO sensors pick up an unexpected mass in the target world line, it would shut down.
The C204 has an array of computers, clocks, and sensors to get you to the correct date. But because timelines get more and more different the further forward or back you go, the unit maxes out at about 60 years. Someone asked him about traveling back 1,000 years. John said that you wouldn't even recognize that world.
The distortion unit reaches its target destination by using very sensitive gravity sensors and atomic clocks. The basic unit of calculation is the second. So yes, in a sense you do dial in a date, and the computer system controls the distortion field. At maximum power, the unit I have is capable of traveling about 10 years an hour. Unfortunately, time travel is not an exact science. There is inherent error and chaos in the computer's ability to make accurate calculations. Based on the current technology of the clocks and sensors, distortion units are only accurate to about 60 years or so. So no, in 2036 we are unable to travel back 1,000 years due to the error rate in the system. The divergence between the world line of origin and the target world line would be too great. If one were to try and travel back that far, history would look nothing like what you would expect. In other words, if I wanted to go back 2,000 years and meet Christ, there is a better than average chance I would end up on a world line where he was never born.
Hold on. One of those pictures, it looked like a bucket seat with a seatbelt.
Yep, that's because on John Titor's first trip, the time machine was mounted inside a 67 Chevy.
No, I guess a DeLorean is too on the nose.
Well, the reason for the Chevy and why John later moved the machine to a truck is because the C204 is heavy. It needs a vehicle with a suspension that can handle the weight. Plus, the time machine has to be mobile. Since it only travels through time and not space, you have to drive to your physical destination first and then move through time. He chose those vehicles because they blend into the times he was traveling to.
Yo, did he say what it feels like to time travel? Like, does it hurt? Does your face get all stretchy?
Well, John Titor does talk about this.
The gravity field generated by the unit overtakes you very quickly. You feel a tug toward the unit similar to rising quickly in an elevator, and it continues to rise based on the power setting the unit is working under. At 100% power, the constant pull of gravity can be as high as 2G as we're moored, depending on how close you are to the unit. There are no serious side effects, but I try to avoid eating before a flight. No bright flash of light is seen. Outside, the vehicle appears to accelerate as the light is bent around it. We have to wear sunglasses or close our eyes, as this happens due to a short burst of ultraviolet radiation. Personally, I think it looks like you're driving under a rainbow. After that, it appears to fade to black and remains totally black until the unit is turned off. We're advised to keep the windows closed as a great deal of heat builds up outside the car. The gravity field also traps a small air pocket around the car that acts as your only O2 supply, unless you bring compressed air with you.
2Gs, ugh. I could never time travel because of my IBS.
That's TMI.
No, it's IBS.
Never mind. Naturally, people were skeptical of all this technology, but John Titor didn't really care.
My goal is not to be believed. Most people do not take news of the war very well, but I find that everyone believes it's inevitable. I watch every day what you are doing as a society. While you sit by and watch your constitution being torn away from you, you willfully eat poisoned food, buy manufactured products no one needs, and turn an uncaring eye away from millions of people suffering and dying all around you. Perhaps I should let you all in on a little secret. No one likes you in the future. This time period is looked at as being full of lazy, self-centered, civically ignorant sheep. Perhaps you should be less concerned about me and more concerned about that.
You know, he makes a lot of good points, but there's no reason to be a dick about it.
John Titor's face was never seen, his voice was never heard, and John Titor is not his real name, so there's not much we know about him. But one person did have a close relationship with John, or at least claimed to: Pamela Moore. Pamela was very active on the message boards and spent a lot of time chatting with John over IM. Before John Titor left, he said he would make a departure video and send it to Pamela.
How's she supposed to know the video's legit?
Well, because John provided Pamela with a secret song to act as a password. This is something only the two of them know, so she could identify imposters. And to this day, the departure video has not arrived, and Pamela has never revealed the secret song. On March 24th, 2001, John Titor would leave his final message and some words of wisdom.
I will be leaving this world line shortly, and this will be my final post. There are only a handful of people who will know exactly when I will be leaving, and I'm sure they will let you know when I'm gone. In the last few days, I have found your choice of topics quite interesting, and from an objective viewpoint, I think it collectively answers one of your own questions. If time travel is real, where are all the time travelers? In the past, I've stated that, quite frankly, you all scare the hell out of me, and I'm sure other temporal drivers would feel the same. But now I have an expanded explanation. A while ago, I related an experience I had with my parents while we were driving down a highway. Every now and then, we would pass someone who was in obvious distress with their vehicle. I was amazed that so many people could pass them without stopping to help. Their explanation was fear. The risk of helping someone was too great, and with today's technology, it probably had a cell phone anyway. If they didn't, the walk to a gas station would be good for them and teach them a lesson for running out of gas. This is why time travelers do not show themselves. In trying to help you, we put ourselves at great risk, and there's really no point to it. I already know you won't pay any attention or believe me because we've already been through it on this world line. Besides, I think the walk to the gas station will do you some good. I also want to thank Pamela for helping me with the email and everyone else who asked intelligent and insightful questions. I have learned a great deal. My parting thought revolves around something JC has been harping on since day one. No, I do not have a secret agenda, but I've been paying a great deal of attention to your world line. My interaction with you was not a direct mission parameter, but it was a secondary mission protocol based on standing orders given to all temporal drivers. That secondary objective is basically to gather as much information about a world line based on a set of observable variables when we first arrive. Your world line met those conditions. What amazes me is why no one here wonders why Y2K didn't hit them at all. Bring a gas can with you when the car dies on the side of the road. Farewell, John.
And John Titor was gone and hasn't been heard from since. But that was really just the beginning of the legend. When the John Titor story first landed in 2001, it was a sensation. But as the years went on, we've been able to see the accuracy of John's predictions. John predicted a civil war in the United States that would begin in 2005. Obviously, that didn't happen. But you can make the case that America has never been more divided than it is today.
Thanks, Twitter.
20% of adults in a recent survey said they believe a civil war is likely within the next 10 years. That's a high percentage. And John Titor predicted a nuclear war in 2015, and that too didn't happen. But considering current world events, the last time we were this close to nuclear war was the Cuban Missile Crisis. I actually think we're in more danger now. He predicted there would be no Olympic Games after 2004. Now, he was wrong about that, but there were no 2020 Olympics. John Titor did get a few things right. There was a mad cow disease outbreak in the early 2000s.
It's America's first confirmed case of bovine spongiform encephalitis in 6 years. BSE is mad cow disease, a potentially deadly brain-wasting infection that can be transferred to humans.
When John Titor was posting in early 2001, most people were still accessing the internet with a dial-up modem. John said in the future, the internet would look more like the current cell phone system. That's exactly right. He said that in the future, the entertainment industry would be decentralized, and anyone would be able to create video which could be watched by many people. More people watch YouTube than watch the networks or even go to the movies. John Titor was right again. He predicted breakthroughs in high-energy physics at CERN. In 2013, the Higgs boson was confirmed. Stephen Hawking originally thought that everything that enters a black hole disappears forever. Titor said that Stephen Hawking made a mistake about this. Stephen Hawking did later change his mind. Now, many of these predictions could be dismissed as educated guesses by someone who was intelligent and knew a lot about science and technology. But there's no denying that John Titor was right. As for the predictions John Titor got wrong, true believers, and there are still a lot of those, always fall back on the many worlds theory. Sure, many of John Titor's predictions were wrong in our timeline, but they came true in other timelines, and there's no way to prove this wrong. But if you look closely at the John Titor story, you do find inconsistencies. You also find convenient coincidences. And because of these problems with the story, many believe that John Titor was a hoax. And if that's true, then who was the real John Titor? Well, there are a few suspects. Whenever anyone does a story about John Titor and who he actually may be, there are a few names that always pop up. The first is Joseph Matheny. He's described as a writer and transmedia artist, and he's mostly known for Ong's Hat, which was one of the first alternate reality or real-time interactive games. And Matheny makes a good case. He said that he, along with 3 other people, developed the John Titor story as a fun experiment to see if they could develop an internet myth.
Mission accomplished.
Matheny won't divulge who the other 3 people are because they're pretty high up in the entertainment industry and have reputations to protect. But a lot of the story tracks. Matheny says the time machine we see in the fuzzy photos was created by a prop designer who's worked on major movies. And John Titor fans have been able to identify pieces of the time machine that are actually real things. Matheny says the reason the messages often have different tones is because they were written by different people on the team. Matheny was responsible for character development. And the reason that John Titor's story is so similar to John Connor's is because it was intentional. Now, I've heard and read some interviews with Matheny, and at first I was skeptical. Initially, I didn't think he had the tech or science background to flesh out the details in the John Titor story. I was very wrong. Matheny was involved in tech since the 80s. He worked with Adobe and Netscape in the early days and holds a few patents. Also, his game, Ong's Hat, had references to theoretical physics. He had the tech chops and a track record in creating online myths. He could have definitely pulled this off. Still, I'd love to see hard evidence. Matheny won't provide any. And when asked, he gets pretty annoyed. He says believe him or don't, he doesn't care. I think that after 20 years, he's sick of people asking him about John Titor. But there are more people to look at. The other name that comes up in the John Titor story is Larry Haber and the Haber brothers. Larry Haber is a Florida-based entertainment attorney. He claims to represent John Titor's mom, Kay, and the Titor family.
Hey, how does a lawyer sleep?
I don't know how.
Oh, first he lies on one side, and then he lies on the other.
Good one. Now, I've seen and read a number of interviews with Larry Haber. He definitely does not have the technology or science background to create John Titor. But his brothers do. Richard Haber is an IT administrator, and Maury Haber is a very senior cybersecurity professional. Maury also has a lot of experience writing about technology. And if you go down the John Titor rabbit hole on YouTube, you'll eventually run into a channel called Hoax Hunter, run by John Rasmus Houston, and I'll link to his channel below. Now, John has done a ton of research on the subject. He's tracked P.O. boxes, he's done text comparisons of Maury Haber's writing to John Titor's posts, he's tracked all the usernames from John Titor's message board. I mean, this is exhaustive research. He's convinced that John Titor is actually Maury Haber, who eventually enlisted his lawyer brother to represent the story.
Now, what does a lawyer get when you give him Viagra?
What?
Taller!
Have a problem with lawyers, do you?
I've been divorced 3 times. What do you think?
Larry Haber has been attached to John Titor for years. Not only does he claim to represent the Titor family, in 2003, he registered the John Titor Foundation, LLC, a for-profit business, and this LLC published John Titor's posts as a book called A Time Traveler's Tale. Larry Haber also registered John Titor as a trademark in 2007.
So this lawyer claims to represent the Titor family, right?
Yeah,
And at the same time, he's got businesses and books and is making money from this thing?
that's right.
Isn't that a conflict of interest?
I think it is, but I guess also has a lot of experience writings of Maury Haber's writing to John Titor's posts. He's tracked all the usernames from John Titor's message board. I mean, this is exhaustive research. He's convinced that John Titor is actually Maury Haber, who eventually enlisted his lawyer brother to represent the story.
Now, what does a lawyer get when you give him Viagra?
What?
Taller!
Have a problem with lawyers, do you?
I've been divorced 3 times.
Research. He's convinced that John Titor is actually Maury Haber, who eventually enlisted his lawyer brother to represent the story.
Now, what does a lawyer get when you give him Viagra?
What?
Taller!
Have a problem with lawyers, do you?
I've been divorced 3 times. What do you think?
Larry Haber has been attached to John Titor for years. Not only does he claim to represent the Titor family, in 2003, he registered the John Titor Foundation, LLC, a for-profit business, and this LLC published John Titor's posts as a book called A Time Traveler's Tale. Larry Haber also registered John Titor as a trademark in 2007.
So this lawyer claims to represent the Titor family, right?
Yeah,
And at the same time, he's got businesses and books and is making money from this thing?
that's right.
Isn't that a conflict of interest?
I think it is, but I guess Larry Haber and the Titor family are okay with it. He won't say.
Hey, how do you get a lawyer out of a tree?
How?
Cut the rope.
Joseph Matheny said he had someone reach out to the publisher of Larry Haber's book and get it pulled. Larry Haber can't confirm that Matheny did this, but he did confirm that the book is out of print and doesn't know why.
So this Matheny guy torpedoed the lawyer?
That's what it looks like.
He's okay in my book. Hey, what do you have when a lawyer is buried up to his neck in sand?
What do you have?
Not enough sand. I got 1 million of them. Baby.
In Larry Haber's defense, even though he represents the Titor family, he doesn't claim to believe the story. He says he doesn't know one way or the other and doesn't care. He's just working for his client.
And making money from his client.
Yeah, and that. Pamela Moore said she was sent a copy of Larry Haber's book, signed by John with a song quoted at the end.
Was it the secret song?
Nope.
How do you know if a lawyer is lying? His
lips are
moving.
Over 20 years later, and the John Titor story still fascinates people. Honestly, I had never considered doing this story because it's been done so many times, but it's one of the most requested topics on the channel. I think the reason we love time travel stories is because it all comes down to possibilities and opportunities. A story about a possible future, especially such a frightening one, gives us an opportunity to reflect on our present and choose a path to avoid that dark future, or it gives us a chance to prepare for it. Think of how useful it would be if someone came back from that future to warn us, to give us the exact steps to follow to ensure our survival. Well, before John Titor disappeared, he did just that.
Do not eat or use products from any animal that is fed and eats parts of its own dead. Do not kiss or have intimate relations with anyone you do not know. Learn basic sanitation and water purification. Be comfortable around firearms. Learn to shoot and clean a gun. Get a good first aid kit and learn to use it. Find 5 people within 100 miles that you trust with your life and stay in contact with them. Get a copy of the U.S. Constitution and read it. Eat less. Get a bicycle and 2 sets of spare tires. Ride it 10 miles a week. Consider what you would bring with you if you had to leave your home in 10 minutes and never return.
Now, I don't know if the story of John Teeter is real. I don't think we'll ever know. But still, my family is taking his advice. We've got the first aid kit, the bicycle, and lots of ammo. We're prepared for the future that John described, at least as best as we can be. And it's okay if you don't believe that John Teeter is from the future. It's a story that anyone would be skeptical of. But be skeptical of John Teeter at your own risk. Me? I'm not willing to take the chance. Thank you so much for hanging.
The pressure is getting even higher for Minnesota Governor Tim Walz. Let's bring in retired Navy Captain Brent Sadler now. He's also a former Pentagon official and senior fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Brett, great to see you.
Hey, great to see you as well, and Merry Christmas.
It is such a relief, and it's just long overdue for a president to actually come down hard on Venezuela and its leader, Nicolas Maduro. What do you make, first of all, of what Trump has done so far regarding trying to stop this narco trafficking crisis that we've seen now for decades, and nobody's ever done anything about it until now?
Yeah, I mean, for historical context, I mean, we've been fighting this war against the narco cartels that span more than any one country. It's bigger than Venezuela since the late 80s. But really, only in the last 6 months or so, by ratcheting up the pressure and actually attacking these drug smuggling boats and actually interdicting the illicit trade that's coming out of Venezuela, has President Trump, for the first time in recent memory, actually gone to the heart of the issue. And that's the business model, the money-making capacity of these illegal, illicit cartels that rely on regimes like Maduro's to provide them a protection racket to operate and move their poison into the United States, kill Americans. And it's also become a springboard for the Chinese, the Russians, and of course, terrorist groups like the IRGC out of Iran and Hezbollah as well.
Yeah, and this is a situation where Democrats have been calling this inappropriate and calling it murder. The president calls it terrorism. And when there are terrorists that are trying to harm Americans in the form of fentanyl and the millions of deaths that we've seen in this country due to these drugs that are being illegally smuggled into this country, why would we not want to protect Americans? Where do you see this moving forward in the new year? Do you believe Democrats will ever get on board with the fact that what we are doing is just protecting Americans? That is the bottom line. That is the reason for all of this.
Well, that's sort of a partisan hyperbole. Really does not consider Americans' best interest, and certainly not our physical security of American citizens on the streets here in the United States. It's purely for political posturing, and it needs to stop. This is an issue of national security. It's an issue of physical security of far too many Americans and families that have been hurt and damaged by the narcotics trafficking. But it's also one of grave national security issue. Congressman Adam Smith, his comments, I think, were off base and missing the mark. For far too long, the United States government has ignored the national security threat brewing south of our border. The Chinese have the largest embassy that does more than just stamp visas in Bahamas, and they have a listening base in Cuba. And the Russians have been training up other countries beyond Venezuela in advanced weapons. This is not something that we should have allowed to occur with at least somewhat of a diplomatic and a much more forceful response years ago. So it's unfortunate that it has to be this aggressive. But this is a result of decades of neglect, and it's good to see President Trump taking the fight to our enemies and basically allowing the people in the region of Latin America to have their voice again. Yeah. Nothing good has happened in Venezuela since Hugo Chavez.
No, and the Venezuelans would agree with this mission. And if this isn't a deterrent, I don't know what is. I mean, blowing boats out of the water that are filled with drugs coming into the United States is the only way, quite frankly, because they've been warned for decades and nothing's been done about it to stop the drugs from flowing in. But it has to go beyond the boats. So what is next? I mean, putting pressure on Maduro, fine. He loves to threaten back. It's not like they have any kind of military assembly whatsoever to actually go to war with the United States. But Colombia needs to be held. Petro needs to be held accountable as well. So where does this go next? Because this is, it seems like the first of several steps, as Pete Hegseth has described.
Oh, yes. No, the noose is tightening, and it's not, Maduro is not the primary target. It's the narco cartels. And then I guess a third target is to get the Chinese, the Russians, the Iranians out of our hemisphere, who have no goodwill for us by their presence here in the region. So going after the drug boats, step one, that is actually starting to hurt the bottom line of the cartels that provide the money and the resources that allow Maduro to stay in power. The second is going after the illicit petroleum industry. Now, this is bigger than Venezuela. It's actually a global issue. And I'd be looking around to see where else you see these dark fleet tankers getting seized and taken. There was one in the Indian Ocean a couple weeks ago that was delivering from China sanctioned missile parts as Iran tries to rebuild its missile inventory. But this tanker, there's another tanker right now that's got my attention. That's Bella 1 that has tight connections to China that has basically been let go, at least for now. Without any Venezuelan oil on board. But that oil is 70% or more of the GDP of Venezuelan's government and their economy. So going after that illegal trafficking in oil will hurt their bottom line. It also hurts the Russians' bottom line. And it certainly is going to make it harder for the Chinese to get a cheap oil on the open market, or at least the black market. So all of this actually dries up a nexus of terror and a nexus of malign influence throughout Latin America by applying these pressures on the drug cartels and their boats, their small running boats, and the tankers at a larger scale. And I think that's all that needs to be done. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, I love that you brought up China, because that was another promise kept by President Trump, that he would be tough on China, something that we have not seen in the past presidents. Anyway, Brenton Sadler, thank you for coming on today. Merry Christmas.
Absolutely. From Hawaii, Mele Kalikimaka.
Oh, I'm so jealous. Thank you so much, and enjoy it there. I would love to be there.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.
Nearly 100 Minnesota mayors say they are deeply concerned and frustrated by the fraud and unchecked spending from state officials. They say the state's $18 billion surplus has disappeared, and now Minnesota projects $3 billion in deficits in 2028. Their letter goes on to say, as mayors, we see firsthand how these decisions ripple outward. Our state owes it to our citizens to practice responsible fiscal management and to stop taxing our families, seniors, and businesses out of Minnesota. We urge the legislature to course correct and to remember that every dollar you manage belongs not to the capital, but to the people of Minnesota.
Joining us now is the Brewer Group CEO, Jack Brewer. Lived in Minnesota for many years of his adult life. Jack, what's your reaction to this letter?
I've said it for years, unfortunately. Minnesota has become the capital of chaos. Liberals have sat there and watched this beautiful city and this great state just become the laughing stock of America. At some point, you have to do something about it. I mean, no human being could have the perspective and the thoughts and the liberalism in their mind like a Tim Walz, like a Keith Ellerson. You expect these type of moves because they've been allowed to do whatever they want. I mean, to promote some of the things that they promote, you understand exactly what's down deeper in their soul. And so you can't put anything by them. And so I don't know why the citizens of Minnesota would have ever trusted a man that puts tampons in kids' locker rooms and promotes the things that he promotes. And so, it's just sad to see that Minnesota now has become literally the laughing stock of America.
Yeah, well, we were originally told that it was $1 billion in fraud, and now we're learning that could be just the tip of the iceberg, and there are reports now that say that it could be upwards of $9 billion in fraud. That's taxpayer dollars. And House Minority Whip Tom Emmer is also saying this about the Walz administration and their knowledge of fraud, saying, quote, I think as they start to peel this onion back, which just seems to be getting deeper and deeper and broader, whoever was responsible needs to be held accountable. My personal opinion is there is no way that $1 billion plus got its way out of the Walz administration without someone in the administration being aware and or complicit. What do you think about that?
I think he's dead on. I mean, there's a special place in heaven for Republicans in Minnesota who have stood the line and stood up to these liberals. I mean, it's really sad when you see a guy like Tim Walz and what he's been allowed to do. I mean, not just Minnesotans. I mean, this is American taxpayer dollars, a lot of it. And so, it's just wrong. So many people locked up in prisons and jails all over the country. I will go into.
Let's bring in retired Navy Captain Brent Sadler. A Fox News alert, 2 police officers have been killed in an explosion in Moscow. Russian officials say the officers saw what they're calling a suspicious individual near a car, and when they went to approach, an explosive device was detonated. A third person believed to be the suspect was also killed. An official from Ukraine's military intelligence tells the Associated Press it was behind the attack. The blast happened near where a senior Russian general was killed in a car bombing on Monday.
Meanwhile, peace talks continued over the weekend between the U.S., Russia, and Ukraine. And while no deal has been reached, Ukraine says they've actually won some concessions in a U.S.-led draft plan. I want to bring in the U.S. ambassador to NATO, the great Matt Whitaker. Good to see you, Hawkeye. This is an interesting quote from Bloomberg. It's a little lengthy. I want to walk you through it and get your reaction. They're basically laying out why Russia's being hesitant, but they've got some interesting points here. Russia's concerns include guarantees against future eastward expansion by the NATO military alliance and on Ukraine's neutral status if it joins the European Union, according to a person close to the Kremlin. Now, the plan also lacks limits sought by Russia on Kyiv's post-war armed forces and types of weapons, the person said, and doesn't provide clear assurances on the status of the Russian language in Ukraine. Russia also wants clarity on the issue of removing sanctions and on hundreds of billions of dollars of frozen Russian assets in the West. I mean, we knew that was going to happen. This is what they typically try to do, Matt. They want to extract a little money in order to stop doing something that they know is illegal under international law. But what do you make of the ongoing talks? Positive direction or not so much?
Yeah. First of all, Kevin, it's great to be with you. Merry Christmas, and especially Merry Christmas to our service members serving abroad this holiday time. And, I'm thinking about those Iowa Guard
Bring in Brent Sadler, retired Navy captain and former Pentagon official, now a Heritage Foundation senior fellow. Brent, always good to have you with us. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. We hear this debate over this effort overall. I want to play for you a soundbite from Senator Chris Murphy, who in this soundbite is referring to the smaller boats that have been blown up, but I think also references this battle against Venezuelan forces on a number of fronts. Watch this.
The administration had no legal justification for these strikes and had no national security justification. They did admit is that there's no fentanyl coming to the United States from Venezuela. Venezuela is mainly exporting cocaine, but almost all of the cocaine that is coming out of Venezuela into the Caribbean isn't going to the United States, it's going to Europe.
What do you make of Senator Murphy's argument there, Brent?
Yeah, I don't follow the senator's logic on this. I mean, the enemy of the American public is the drug cartels that have been given sanctuary by the narco regime of the Maduro government in Venezuela. And those drugs, cocaine, does also kill over 10,000 American citizens in overdoses, as well as the fentanyl. And of course, these gangs that are moving these illicit narcotics in our streets are also attacking any American citizen or police officer or judge that gets in their way as an extension of this narco regime. So the fight's on our streets already. The cartels are the enemy, really, quite frankly, and it's a shared enemy with our partners in Europe as well. And it is a true statement that some of those drugs are going to other places in the United States. But again, to put these cartels out of business and to force them to fight amongst themselves and go extinct or bankrupt, it's going to require cutting them off from their markets, and that's the United States and Europe. And I think we've got quite a wide array of allies and partners that are already involved in these type of operations. I just point the audience's attention to the Joint Interagency Task Force South that's based in Key West, that's been waging an interdiction war against these cartels for many years, going back to the late 80s.
Do you think that President Trump will succeed in pushing Maduro out of power? We've been down this road before with leaders like Maduro and also Assad in Syria, where it felt like their tipping point was imminent. We are also learning by some reporting out there that he's being protected by Cuban forces within Venezuela.
Yeah, I'd probably add Russian and perhaps even Chinese money as also trying to support and protect that regime in Venezuela. Clearly, Venezuela has become a nexus of a lot of illicit activities and funneling large amounts of money to regimes far afield, to include terrorists like Hamas and the IRGC out of Iran, but of course also continuing to provide a means at which to provide money on these dark fleet ships to Russia as they wage war in Ukraine. And China, of course, is benefiting and profiteering wherever the chaos that this ill-gotten proceeds are taken from. So it's actually part of a bigger picture. I do think President Trump is taking the right approach. You do not need to go in and force a regime out to force it to change. The Venezuelan people, I think, are fed up with this narco cartel running their country. Certainly, it's completely impoverished all of them since Hugo Chavez's rise to ascendancy and his communist and socialist policies. So the region also, I think, is looking for a change. I think all of the wind is the president's back. The key thing is keep the pressure up and don't try to feel a sense of urgency to go in and attack the regime, because I think that may actually cause more problems than good.
Interesting. This is what Senator Rand Paul says about any involvement in any form of war or battle against Venezuela. Watch this.
I consider it a provocation and a prelude to war, and I hope we don't go to war with Venezuela. Look, at any point in time, there are 20, 30 governments around the world that we don't like that are either socialist or communist or have human rights violations. We could really literally go through a couple dozen, but it isn't the job of the American soldier to be the policeman of the world.
So I guess it raises the question. I mean, he's right that there are many governments around the world that we have issue with. But